With the release of the Sony a7C II, a lot of people are wondering whether or not it is a worthy upgrade from the Sony a7C, or perhaps you're on the market for a small, compact, full-frame camera, and you're wondering which one you should go for. Well, let's have a look at the specs, see how they stack up on paper, and see which one is the right one for you. So, let's hop into it. Now, just to get it out of the way, this video is not sponsored by Sony in any way, shape, or form, so, that's out there. At my work, I spend a lot of time comparing the different specs of different cameras and stacking them up against each other to see which comes out on top at which price point. And one of those big comparisons is the Sony a7C versus the Sony a7C II. Now, if you compare the bodies, there's not a lot of difference there. Actually, in terms of size, there's only a 4mm difference, with the Sony a7C II being that 4mm thicker. It has ever so slightly deeper grip, but it is still a very shallow grip. So if you didn't like how the Sony a7C I felt, you probably won't like how the Sony a7C II feels. But there is a difference in the buttons and switches. So with the Sony a7C II, at the front of the grip, you do get a customizable wheel, which is a very welcome addition. On top of that, on top of the camera, what was the exposure compensation dial has now been turned to a just completely custom dial. With the mode switch, it gets the photo, video, and S&Q switch from the newer Sony a7 cameras. And on the back, it has one additional custom button. So there's the I/O is quite a bit better on the Sony a7C II. So while the bodies themselves are quite the same, with the a7C II just having better I/O, the biggest differences between the cameras is inside. With the Sony a7C having that 26 megapixel sensor, but the Sony a7C II taking the sensor from the a7 IV, bumping up that megapixel count from 26 to 33. Now, in most situations, you're probably not going to notice that much of a difference between those two megapixel counts unless you crop in, because 26 megapixel images are absolutely great for any sort of use. But not only that, the a7C II actually gets the AI chip from the a7R5, meaning that it gets all of those AI features that the a7R5 has. For example, the ridiculously good autofocus and subject detection, but also auto framing. So if you're shooting a video and you want the camera to be your cameraman, essentially, it can crop in and keep you in the middle of the frame and follow you around as you move in the frame itself. It's a neat feature for sure, but possibly not a deal breaker for many people. The EVF on the Sony a7C II has also been upgraded, but only in terms of magnification. So with the a7C having a 0.59 times magnification, the a7C II now has 0.7 times magnification, meaning it's a bit better, but the resolution is not upped at all, so it's still pretty bad. Actually, it's quite bad. Usable, but compared to pretty much everyone else, it's bad. The display on the back of the a7C II has also been upgraded from the 920,000 dot LCD that was on the a7 I, a7C I, to the 1.03 million dot display on the a7C II. It's not a massive upgrade, but an upgrade nonetheless. But it is still behind pretty much every proper competitor. In terms of internal capabilities, the a7C II gets a lot from the Sony a7 IV. So mainly 4K can now be captured in 10-bit 422 up to 30 frames per second. But you can also now capture 4K 60 FPS, but that does come in with that APS-C crop, meaning it is 1.5 times cropped in. But having that feature is still a nice to have. And if you want to do some slow-mo stuff, you have 1080p 120 frames per second. But if you do want to utilize that 10-bit 422 color and you shoot in Sony S-Log or S-Log Cine, well, the A7C II also supports user LUTs. So you can upload your LUTs to the camera and get a tone-corrected preview so you can set up your shot much better, much easier. Also, the Sony a7C II gets Sony's focus breathing compensation, which is a nice to have. But also another nice to have thing is the fact that the Sony a7C II can output 4K 30 FPS through the USB-C connection that it has. And it's through UVC protocols, meaning you can just plug it into your computer and you'll have a 4K 30 FPS web camera ready to go. No drivers, no other software needed. So if you want to rock those Zoom meetings, you can. Okay, but for real, content creators, that is a fantastic feature to have. The IBIS on the a7C II has also been improved from the a7C, so instead of 5 stops, it now has 7 stops of stabilization. How useful it is, well, that's out there. It's okay, apparently, as far as I've watched some reviews go, but it's not a massive change. So there's been plenty of upgrades in the a7C II compared to the a7C. But another thing that's also got an upgrade because of that is the price. So the a7C II comes in at about $2,200 for the body alone and $2,500 for the kit. Now compare that to the a7C, which has now gone down in price because of the a7C II, putting it now at around $1,600 for the body only and $1,900 with the kit. Now that is when bought new. But since the release of the a7C II and since the fact that the a7C has been out for quite a long time, there is a lot of a7Cs used in circulation. Just taking a quick look at B&H Photos used section, I was able to find a $1,400 kit of the a7C. So that means you're actually getting $1,100 cheaper than if you bought the a7C II kit new. With that in mind, if I had an a7C Mark I, would I be upgrading to the a7C II? And I think I would. Because for me, in my use case, the fact that you're able to shoot 4K 10-bit 422 in 24 frames per second that I shoot my videos in, as well as the capability of shooting 4K 60 even with the crop, gives me significant upsides in my video work that I do a lot. But on top of that, the 33 megapixels over the 26 megapixels, as well as the AI chip and the features that that brings, meaning the ridiculously good autofocus, brings me significant strides in photography as well. So for me, the a7C II would be worth the money if I were to upgrade or if I were to buy one now. But that does not mean that the a7C I is not worth it. Because, like I said before, that 26 megapixel sensor still takes fantastic images. And you can still record 4K 24, 4K 30, but there's no 4K 60 and there's no 10-bit 422. You can get great video, it's just not quite as good as the a7C II. Bearing in mind that it's almost half the price if you buy it used, I can completely understand going for the a7C over the a7C II. But thanks for watching. I will link both of the cameras in the description, and I would like to hear you and your thoughts in the comments below. If not for anything else, then just some shoutouts for the algorithm. But with that, have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all next time. Okay? Bye.